You know when something in a series just clicks for you? No matter how small or large the detail is, it just speaks to you. Well, that was very much the case for me with Steins Gate, a series that lured me in with its interesting premise of time travel and this secret organization, but made me stay for the characters and the stories that it wanted to tell. I think the best way for me to try and put into words what the series meant to me is to start at the very beginning. In episode 1, we are introduced to the quite eccentric, self-titled mad scientist Okabe, as well as his two companions. The extremely naive and innocent Mayuri, and Daru, another eccentric personality with plenty of his own quirks and oddities. This light-hearted introduction, in retrospect, feels like the thing that made me lower my guard and what allowed this series to impact me so much. Despite all this talk of a secret organization, it never felt too serious. Combined with Okabe's over-the-top antics of being a mad scientist, really messed with my expectations. Even though we had already seen clear evidence of fishy business going on with the appearance of the satellite-looking thing and Kurisu's apparent death. But for some reason, I still didn't really take it too seriously. Speaking of Kurisu, she is the final of the core characters to join the future Gadget Lab, and functions as a clear counterweight to Okabe. Unlike his bombastic personality, Kurisu is usually a calm and serious person. That is, until she interacts with Okabe. After being named Assistant or Christina, her calm and collected persona would quickly disappear, showing that her personality isn't just a clear science type. As we get to know her more and more, we get to see her sarcastic and humorous side as well, once again, especially when interacting with the mad scientist himself. The juxtaposition of them finally being on the same wavelength and agreeing on something in a generally serious manner, just for Okabe to suddenly yell out assistant and the whole conversation just collapses into them picking on each other, is what made these interactions so much fun to see. This sort of dynamic carries on throughout the show, as the lab members go around helping other characters change their past through the D-mails. And looking at these episodes in retrospect, there are already so many signs that Okabe is already starting to doubt what they're doing. The nature of time travel is extremely dangerous in and of itself. Because of the butterfly effect, a small change in the past may alter the future beyond recognition. This isn't delved too deeply in the series, as it's more concerned with a different ideology when dealing with changing the past, which we'll get to in a moment. But we do see glimpses of this, as Okabe struggles to deal with what is still real and what has changed because of his D-mails. During the first half of the series, after each major change in the past, we see him frantically screaming about what has now changed, and slowly realizing that they may be messing around with much more than they can deal with. And then, episode 12. During the episode, we see Kurisu and Okabe go to the store, where their conversation gives us some pretty major insights into Okabe's thinking. They joke around and pick on each other again until Kurisu mentions that she is really surprised about Okabe not wanting to time travel right away, as they had finally understood the mechanics of how it works. This of course is in stark contrast to what we saw at the beginning of the series. Okabe's only goal was to figure out how it works, but now he was quite reluctant to even think about it. Instead, they decide to go public with their discovery, and we get another line from Kurisu that, looking at now, really cuts deep.
Dad's going to find out I made a time machine. I don't even want to imagine the kind of temper tantrum he's gonna pitch.
To which Okabe responds,
"As a lab member, you are entitled to my protection in times of impending crisis."
I don't think I need to explain what this is talking about. After having sort of a party, Okabe and Mayuri both meet upon the roof, where Mayuri explains that she's very excited about all the new lab members, and that they should expand the lab. She then talks about how much things have changed. Okabe has gone from being sad and lonely to the lab being a bustling and exciting place, with so many new members. This further drives home that despite his bombastic personality, Okabe really is a very caring person to those close to him. But then, everything changes.
Oh no, I just wound you! Don't tell me you're broken!
The fact that the most peaceful and innocent of the characters is killed here is just devastating. With no other choice, Okabe risks everything and goes back in time just as Kurusu is shot in front of him. After successfully leaping back in time, Okabe has been changed forever. With the knowledge of what's to come, he begins to search for Mayuri and sends everyone home. And this is where I realized what I had gotten myself into. We went from a goofy story of a bunch of students trying to build a time machine to a tragic story about determinism and the meaningless of thinking about the past. I think most people can relate to those sleepless nights where you lie there in bed and think about what you could have done or said differently. Thinking about that stupid conversation where you said something you didn't mean, or something you wish you had said, and so on. Well, I'm the type of person where I really take this to an extreme. It's been something that I've been doing ever since I was a kid. This obsessive construction of alternate scenarios is something that has been a time killer for me for years now. And it's a habit that I've really been trying to get rid of, because at the end of the day, it's meaningless. No matter how many alternate paths I create, what happened, happened. And Steins Gate captures that perfectly. Seeing Okabe do anything and everything in his power to change the events of history trying to save Mayuri felt devastating. We see his slow realization that no matter what he tries, the outcome is the same. And this is where the second interpretation of Steins Gate can be drawn: determinism and whether free will exists at all. Determinism is a philosophical view that all events are determined completely by previously existing causes. In other words, you have no real control over anything that happens. The reason why you're watching this video is because you were always meant to, and so on. This of course is in stark contrast to the rest of the show. The very idea of time travel in the show would dictate that due to there being an infinite amount of world lines or universes, there by definition would have to be some where Mayuri lives. This is the concept of a quantum multiverse. That means a new universe is created every time there is a diversion in events. So, for a basic example, you can either turn left or right. There is a universe where you turn left, and there is a universe where you turn right. At the next turn, there can now be 4 more universes that can be created, and this compounds into an infinite amount of different worlds where anything that can happen has happened. But returning to Steins Gate, that is remixed with the deterministic approach, because even though Okabe changes all the catalysts that led to Mayuri's death, she still does not live past that day. This of course changes as he undoes all the alterations he has made so far, slowly reverting the world to what it was supposed to be before he messed with time. Again, this further speaks to how thinking about what you would or wouldn't do in the past is just meaningless. If you think about it, by the end of the show, Okabe is back to square one. He has undone almost all alterations so far, which has pushed Mayuri's death into the future. But notice how I said almost all, because there's still one. His very first, accidental D-mail that happened to save Kurusu. This is something I hadn't really talked about before. While Okabe jumps back and forth in time, he becomes much closer with Kurusu, who's the only one who fully understands the magnitude of their actions and helps him reverse the changes. We slowly start to see that while they may have seemed like two completely different people at the start, they're actually very much alike, and so we see a deep bond form between them. Remember how Mayuri said that this is the first time she's seen Okabe actually happy? What comes next is again a complete diversion from the seemingly silly show at the start. Kurusu's survival is the catalyst to Mayuri's death. Okabe is now forced to choose between two loved ones, and either way, one of them has to die. The genius thing about Steins Gate is that it takes full advantage of its premise. Due to the multiverse theory, it can both give us a satisfying happy ending with both Kurusu and Mayuri surviving, and continuing to tell the dark tale that it wishes to tell. Enter episode 23B, the true ending. After who knows how many attempts of saving Mayuri, and then attempting to save Kurusu as well, Okabe realizes that it's worthless. The original timeline is exactly what is meant to happen. Everything he has done was meaningless. He has no free will. Kurusu's death was determined from the beginning, and if he wishes to change it, Mayuri is the price. We see exactly what Kurisu talked about. If she were to invent a time machine, her father would lose his mind, which is exactly what we see happen. Her father attempts to murder her. Ultimately, despite all Okabe's attempts, the course of history is already determined. Kurisu dies just like she did in episode 1, and Okabe gives up on attempting to change it. And this is what reinforced the point of not messing with the past, returning to how it spoke to me. I already mentioned how I can spend countless hours thinking about what could have been, and so on. But this is something that has only gotten worse since I started making content on YouTube. I think this is something that everyone who has done any sort of creative work can relate to. Every single time you consider something finished and take a step back for a moment, you start noticing all the little things you would have done differently. Even the most minuscule of details, like a 2-second transition being slightly off in an hour-long video, or a typo or misspeaking or anything. And this is especially true for larger projects. After spending days working on something, it should feel rewarding to finally complete it. Instead, the whole thing is ruined as you start poking holes in it, and thinking, should you have spent a little more time on it, changed your approach, added something, cut something? These are the sorts of things that can occupy my mind for so long, and seeing this concept explored in Steins Gate just really spoke to me. I know this is a little ridiculous, but in a weird way, I really think that seeing this imaginary character come to terms with the fact that the past is the past and that it cannot be changed has also made me rethink about my perspective. And that's the video. Bit of a more personal one, but it's really one that I wanted to make. Watching through this series has been a wild ride, and I have no idea why I hadn't decided to watch it before. Everything about it seems like something I'd be interested in. At the time of writing, I'm still going through the sequel, and just like the original, I'm absolutely loving it. As per usual, all the social media links are below. I would really encourage you to follow the Twitter. Due to my schedule being absolutely wild at the moment, I post updates on upcoming content quite frequently there. But, other than that, I want to say thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.